Revenge films.
I'm Molly, an ordinary housewife. I live happily with my husband Don and 5-year-old daughter, except for one problem. There was a woman named Barbara in our neighborhood whose daughter went to the same preschool as my daughter. She tended to brag and show off just about everything to other mothers, and we didn't like her very much. I lived close to her and couldn't ignore her entirely, so I did my best not to be her friend or foe. Barbara wanted to be the best of everything, and she was envious when she saw someone who seemed above her. Don works at a foreign-affiliated company, and he has a high income, so she sort of hated me. Despite how she sees us, we're an ordinary family and not surrounded by luxury. If there was one thing that stood out with my family, it was that Dawn drove a fancy car. When she saw our car in the garage, she would say, "Do you have to show it off?" I didn't like this, but I didn't want to argue, so I just ignored it. One day when I picked up my daughter at preschool, I saw her tell other mothers that her husband bought a new car, and she stopped me when I was about to leave. "Can I park my car in your garage tonight?" I told her Don needed to park his car in there, but she insisted. "Come on, it's just one night." And I said no to her again firmly and left. After we stopped by for grocery shopping and arrived home, I couldn't believe what I saw. There was Barbara's car in our garage. I called her immediately and she said, "I'm going to use your garage for a while, thanks," and hung up the phone. When Don got home at night, he stormed in after he saw a stranger's car in our garage. So I told him what had happened, and he suggested we wait and see. So I said okay, but she didn't move her car the next day, and after that, I was ready to call the police, but Don said the same thing. Let's wait and see just a little more. I told him that she wouldn't listen to me, and I didn't want her to bother us with this anymore. And he said,
"My company will soon undergo personnel changes, and we might move. We may not have to deal with this in a rush."
So I agreed with him, but I was still bothered and had to tell Barbara many more times to move her car out of our garage. Since she used our garage without our permission, Don had to park his car on the street. It was outrageous. But Don didn't seem to feel the same way as I did. After a little while, Don was transferred and we were to move out of the house just as he said we would. The next destination was Sweden. Once we got there, he will be in the position for at least 5 years, so we invited our family for dinner before we moved out. My parents would drive to get here, so I had to have our garage available. I explained this to Barbara about my parents coming a long way, but she still didn't move her car out. I sent her a text numerous times and called her. She ignored all of them. Up until that point, Don was tolerant, but he was finally irritated. As a result, my parents had to park in the nearby parking garage and we paid for it. We were busy packing, but I couldn't leave this place without complaining to her. So Don and I went to see Barbara on the weekend. We rang the doorbell and Barbara answered the door. "Why are you here?" So I said we came to talk about her car, and she whispered, "Shh, don't talk so loud. My husband can hear you. He's home today, and it's not a good time for us." She then disappeared into the house. We didn't have time to do this when we were busy getting ready to move out of the country, so I rang the bell again. This time, she brought her husband to the door. Honey, these people are harassing me.
Yeah, I don't know what you brought here, but my wife doesn't like it. We're spending the time with family, so please leave.
He didn't even listen to us and shut the door. When we got home, Dawn said,
We have no choice but to resort to the last resort.
On our moving day, even though I contacted her many times and told her about our moving, she didn't even show up, leaving her car in our garage. When the moving company loaded up our stuff, we were about to leave as well, and she still didn't show. Then Don finally took action. He closed the garage door and locked it inside. Don was expected to be relocated for 5 to 10 years, and we arranged for our relative who lived close by to become a house sitter during our absence. She can't get her car out, you know, I said to him, and he said,
That's the idea.
We left, boarded our flight, and moved to a foreign country. Barbara called me a few times, but we were too busy to deal with her. Three days later, finally, I had a moment to answer the call from her, and she was furious. You have to tell me your realtor for your house. You must have put it up for sale. I told her we didn't plan to sell the house because we'd move back here after Dawn's overseas posting. You're kidding, right? Where's the key to your garage? I need to use my car. So I said that I had the key with me. Huh? How could you do this to me? I am calling the police! So I had to remind her that I had told her not to park her car in our garage, and I repeated the same thing 100 times, and she still wouldn't listen to me and completely ignored me, including the final warning. So if someone gets charged, it would be her. Then she said nothing and hung up the phone. A few hours later, I got a call from the local police in America. Barbara tried to break our garage door after our conversation. My neighbor called the police, and Barbara was arrested on the spot. My relative, who was to be a house sitter, had a copy of the garage key, so I asked for her help so Barbara's husband could take the car out. Barbara told him that she rented the monthly parking garage, but in reality she used our garage for free, and she used that money for herself. Her husband was furious to learn all this. The story of her arrest didn't take long to spread among the mothers at the preschool. Her husband divorced her and took his child. Barbara was left all alone. Since she was a housewife, she had no money, and it was difficult for her to find work, especially with her arrest record. She sent me emails and texts saying, "You're wealthy. Please lend me some money. You played a part in this." So I simply said, "If you're threatening me, I'll call the police." After this, it stopped. I later heard that Barbara was working at the factory and living in the company dorm. But her husband wouldn't let her see their child. It's all her own doing, so it's a natural outcome. We returned to our house in America after 5 years. My daughter was happy to see her old friends, who are all now in 4th grade. The house where Barbara lived before now has a new tenant, and we are acquainted. I don't ever want to get involved in that kind of trouble. You can't be too careful with your neighbors.
How was today's video? If you enjoyed it, please subscribe, like, and leave a comment. Stay tuned for more.